You are listening to Skin, Earth, Vitality, the podcast where ancient wisdom meets modern vitality. If you are seeking to reconnect with your innate vibrancy, you're in the right place. I'm Emily Davis, a seasoned holistic esthetician and herbalist. Join me as we unlock the secrets of ancient skincare practices, explore the beauty of seasonal and nature-based living, herbalism, and true holistic well-being for you and the broader ecosystem. This podcast is brought to you by Stratum Aesthetics. Head to stratumaesthetics.com to find curated skincare, body care, and other wellness products hand-selected by me. Now enjoy the show. So I was going to do this episode as a Q&A episode, like question and answer from listeners. And I put out some questions on Instagram and got some awesome questions. And I realized after trying to answer these questions that they really needed their own episode. So I love me for that idea, but it turns out in practice it didn't feel right. So I decided to pivot, and today instead I'm going to do a behind the mic episode and give you a little peek behind the curtain and talk about the lessons that I've learned from the last year. So welcome in. This is my 1 year anniversary episode. 1 year ago, I hit publish on my very first podcast episode. And I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I wasn't sure if anyone would listen. And I had a lot of fear around putting myself out there. But I just had this gut feeling that it was something that I needed to do. And fast forward to today, 52 episodes later, I can confidently say that starting this podcast has been one of the most, I would say, transformative decisions that I've made in my business. And it was not easy. I think the biggest challenge for me I thought it was going to be the tech. That was kind of what was the obstacle in the way before I started. And it wasn't really figuring out what to say. It was more a fear of being seen. And I know that I'm not alone in that, because we're in this weird time right now where visibility feels like this double-edged sword. We want to be seen, right? We want to share. That's what social media is all about. But we've also been conditioned to believe that if we step forward, we now become a target, that people are just waiting for us to mess up, that if we speak, we have to get it exactly right or we're going to risk being torn apart. So today I want to share what I've learned from a year of podcasting, and not just about creating content, but also about visibility and consistency and pushing through fear, even in a world where it sometimes feels safer to stay small. Whether you're an esthetician, an entrepreneur, or someone who is just struggling with putting themselves out there, I hope this episode gives you something to think about. So let's get into it. If you've been around for a while, you know I've always had a deep connection to writing. Writing has always been the foundation of how I process and share ideas. And honestly, I do think that writing is the foundation of any content creation, whether it's blogging or podcasting or making a YouTube video or creating an Instagram post or an Instagram reel. It's all going to start with writing. So in 2022, I started feeling this pull to expand my reach. And my first instinct with that was to write more. So I signed up for a writing course called Ship 30 for 30. And one of the instructors of that course wrote a book called The Art and Business of Online Writing, which I read and love and highly recommend. And I thought that writing, maybe in the form of blogging, would be my way of reaching more people outside of just my treatment room. And so as I started doing this in Ship 30 for 30, the challenge is that you write like an essay every single day for 30 days. And I obviously focused my essays in on my area of expertise with like beauty, skincare, herbalism. And it was such a great exercise to do because it forced me into that creative space in my brain, and it forced me to think about how I wanted to speak to people, all the things. And as I was digging into this, I got this ping. I swear this was the craziest message. It was just like, you have to start a podcast if you want to be successful on this path that you're going down. And I was like, oh, okay. And I had a lot of mental blocks around this. Honestly, a big one was this weird place that we find ourselves in culturally, where we are living in this time where we're so consumed with policing each other's words. We're waiting for people to slip up so that we can correct them. There's this need to make someone else wrong in order to make ourselves feel right. And whether you call that cancel culture, call out culture, or just tall poppy syndrome on steroids, it feels dangerous. And tall poppy syndrome, I learned this term from Erin Holt, the functional nutritionist. Tall poppy syndrome is this phenomenon where we criticize people and cut them down or resent people who stand out or who achieve success or rise above the rest. And it stems from this idea that if one poppy grows taller than the others, it should be cut down to maintain uniformity. And this mentality can create this fear of being seen. It definitely did in me. It causes people to shrink themselves and avoid criticism and resentment. And it's so prevalent online, on social media, where stepping into visibility can definitely feel like an invitation for judgment. It's like this unspoken thing that's like, you can grow, but only if it doesn't make others feel uncomfortable. And I think that that's what makes visibility feel so vulnerable. It's not just fear of failure, it's fear of outgrowing the space that people have mentally placed you in. Because when you start taking up more space, when you start showing up more confidently, it makes other people question their own comfort zones. And sometimes instead of being inspired, people react by trying to pull you back down to their level. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people, joke about like, oh, everyone has a podcast now, or, just making like comments about people who are showing up online or influencers. And I know that there's obviously like annoying things about that, but I think that there's actually this subconscious thing about trying to pull people down to your comfort level. And it's not because people are bad people, but it's because growth highlights where someone hasn't pushed themselves. And I'm sharing this because if you've ever felt like you need to keep yourself small, or if you feel like stepping into your full voice might create tension, you're not alone. I felt that so hard. And I'm actually feeling like 2025 is giving me major 2020 vibes, where I felt that so strongly just with the climate of the world. And I'm starting to kind of feel the same energy happening again. And so it's just something to think about, something to notice, and something to see where you can evolve through or push through. This type of energy really made me hesitate with the podcast. I am a person who thinks deeply about what I say. I never want to be careless with my words, but I also know that over filtering yourself to avoid criticism is a prison. So I had to make a decision. Am I going to let this fear keep me quiet, or am I going to trust myself to speak anyways? And this question is something that I find myself asking myself over and over again. A year into the podcast, a couple of lessons I've learned is the first one is that you don't have to be ready to start. If you are waiting until you feel fully prepared for whatever it is you're trying to build, you're never going to start. Confidence comes from doing, not from the waiting. Confidence comes from showing up every single day, writing the things out, hitting publish, hitting whatever it is, doing the actual thing. The next is that visibility is a muscle. The more you put yourself out there, the easier it gets. And I think back to when I started recording these episodes, it would feel just like such a strain on my body. It was so hard. It was so scary. And so this is the 52nd time that I've done that this year, and it's now feeling good. It's feeling like it's flowing from my throat chakra. It's feeling good in my body. And I definitely think it's because I've been building that muscle. And speaking of building muscles, consistency matters more than like viral moments or that stroke of genius or whatever it is. And I really see building anything meaningful as a metaphor for going to the gym. The thing is, some weeks when you go to the gym, you're putting in your reps. Sometimes they're amazing. Sometimes you feel strong. Sometimes I show up here and I feel creative and full of energy and I have 1,000 ideas. And then other weeks when you go to the gym, your reps are sloppy and you're just going through the motions, but you're just showing up because it's part of that like habit building practice, or it's part of that consistency, part of that devotion to yourself. And that's true with so many things in business. Sometimes I just have to show up and do the things that I don't want to do because I'm going through the motions, because I have to do it. And I've found that with the podcast. I found that when I was doing the Ship 30 for 30 course. It was like some mornings I did not want to write at all. I didn't have ideas and I just did it. And about halfway through, I would feel a lot better with it. I've been noticing with that with the podcast as well. But you still just got to show up. It's not about perfection. It's about devotion. Podcasting, showing up online, sharing your voice, whatever it is that you're doing, it's not about getting it right. It's about building trust with yourself. I definitely don't record an episode every single week because I'm constantly bursting with ideas. I do it because I'm committed to the practice of showing up. And I feel deep in my soul that that is how you build something that lasts. And here's where I want to go deeper into this idea of devotion, because consistency isn't just about discipline. It's about devotion to your bigger vision, to the thing that you're building that doesn't even fully exist yet. Maybe you can't even fully see it in your mind's eye. We live in a world of instant gratification where we're just constantly shown finished products. And I think social media does that a lot. And I don't just hate social media. I just think it's an example of many of the things I'm speaking on today. We see like someone's successful business or this like thriving brand or a well-established expert, but we don't really see like that unglamorous middle. We don't see the years of showing up before anyone noticed them, or the work that they were putting in when they felt like nothing was happening. And people aren't showing up on social media talking about how they're not feeling inspired today. And I think that is the part that breaks most people, and it has for me in the past. And it's just hard because when you don't get immediate proof that your effort is paying off, it's really easy to quit. But devotion means staying committed even when you're not seeing those obvious results, even when it feels like no one is listening, even when your energy is really low and you're in late luteal phase and you have horrible brain fog, because you trust that every rep, every imperfect action, every time you're showing up is all adding up. You're not going to go to the gym twice and think that you're going to have like a 6-pack or be able to run a marathon, but we expect that we post a few times or we put ourselves out there once or twice and suddenly we're going to get traction. I really feel that people who build something truly meaningful are the ones that keep going after that excitement has faded. And I think that this is where devotion is different from motivation. I feel like motivation is that excitement that we feel, and devotion is like this agreement that you already made with yourself that you're gonna do it. It's like, I'm doing this because it's part of me now. And that's been, I think, my biggest lesson from this podcast is shifting into seeing my work and my vision as an act of devotion to myself. And it's not about proving myself to others. It's not really about who's watching or who's listening. It's about me fulfilling the agreement that I made with myself. So if there's one thing that I hope you take away from this episode, it's that being seen is scary, but hiding is a prison. If you feel pulled to do something, to start a business, to put yourself out there in any way, to start a creative endeavor, you have to trust that pull, because fear never is going to go away, as I've learned so far. I don't know, maybe it will go away, but I think it's just about getting better at moving with it. So my challenge for you is think about where you're holding yourself back from being seen. Is it about posting in your business? Is it about speaking up for something you believe in? Is it just allowing yourself to be visible in a new way, to show your art, to show your craft, whatever it is? I would love for you to take one small action towards visibility today. And it does not have to be big. I'm a big fan of baby steps, just something that moves you forward. And if this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Please send me an email. I'm going to put my email in the show notes. Send me an email. Tell me how you are moving forward with being more visible. I thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me for the last year in this endeavor that I'm doing and facing my fears and just doing the thing anyways. I'm grateful for you. Here's to another year of stepping into visibility. I will be back next week, and until then, be well. You've been listening to the Skin, Earth, Vitality podcast. If you like what you heard today, consider giving me a 5-star rating. It helps other people just like you to find the show. You can shop products and find all of my offerings on my website, stratumaesthetics.com, and follow me on my social channels at Stratum Aesthetics.